Origen, who I'll call Saint Origen, in the 3rd century, in his book on First Principles, often spoke of this idea of iron and fire. I'm not sure if many of you are familiar with it. I'll read out a passage that he wrote on First Principle, and in this specific case, he's talking about Christ. He says, the metal iron is capable of cold and heat. So he's talking about a metal iron, like a piece of iron. He goes, if then a mass of iron be kept constantly in the fire, receiving the heat through all its pores and veins, and the fire being continuous, and the iron is never removed from it, then it becomes wholly converted into fire. Could we at all say of this, which is by nature a mass of iron, that when placed in fire and incessantly burning, it was at any time of it being admitting the capability of being cold? So saying, if you have this iron, a block of iron, and you put it in a fire, and you hold it in that fire, and you keep it in that fire, it will eventually take on all the properties of fire. And if you were somehow able to query or question it, it would say, of course it's not cold. On the contrary, he says, because it is more consistent with truth, do we not rather say what we often see happening in furnaces, that it has become wholly fire, seeing nothing but fire visible in it? And if anyone were to attempt to touch or handle it, he would experience the action not of iron, but of fire. In this way, then, the soul, which, like an iron in the fire, has been perpetually placed in the Word, and perpetually in the wisdom, and perpetually in God, is God in all that it does, feels, and understands. So he's talking here about the soul of Christ. He's saying that the humanity of Christ, the human soul of Christ, being in the divinity, being in the presence of the fire of God, takes on all the properties, is transformed by it. Okay? But he doesn't stop there. And that's why I'm saying this. I know it's a bit long-winded, but he goes on and he says this. To all the saints, and when he says saints, he means all of you. This is what you're all called to. Myself, hopefully one day. I don't know if I'll make it, but I'll try. Pray for me. To all the saints, finally, some warmth from the word of God must be supposed to have passed. And in this soul, the divine fire itself must be believed to have rested, from which some warmth may have passed to us. I'll read that again. To all the saints, finally, some warmth from the word of God, Christ, must be supposed to have passed. And in this soul, the divine fire itself must be believed to have rested, from which some warmth may have passed to us. So what he's saying is, because Christ takes upon himself humanity, humanity is transformed by that encounter with divinity, by being in union with divinity, in the case of Christ. But he says for everyone else, the closer we come to him, the more his warmth and his fire also transforms us, so that we become on fire, so that we're not lukewarm. It's a very, very powerful image that this bar of iron, something that is cold and dense, like a lot of my friends, if you take it and you plunge it in fire, then it takes all of the properties of fire, heat, light, and energy. But should you take that bar of iron again and move it away from the fire, what happens to it? It becomes cold, dense, useless again. Origen says that's the exact same thing about our souls. The more we are held in his presence, the more we take upon him, from him, his fire. His warmth passes to us, transforms us, and then we become fire. But you take us away from that again, we become cold and dense. That is what being lukewarm is, being out of his presence.